Welcome, everybody, to Book Club. This book was recommended by the fantastic Olivia, and we read Warm Bodies, which is a fun little book. It's a love story about zombies. So, yes, I finished the whole... well, that's not true. I skipped part of it. I skipped a part of it. I thought the beginning was pretty cool. I love the concept. I think it's really fun. Oh, the camera's over here. Let me move this. I love the concept. I thought that the beginning was kind of boring, so it did lose me a little bit. And then after I skipped chapters 4 and 5, I came in around 6 or something where the plot seemed to have picked up again, and I carried it through to the end, which I thought was a pretty strong finish. They sort of added in a villain at the end. I think it was kind of a love story, but it helped to have that, I guess. But it would have been cooler if that was better framed. I have a lot of thoughts here, but I haven't put much time into compressing them yet, so hopefully I'll just spit out random notes as you guys are chatting. But what did you guys think? Overall thoughts on the book? Did you read it? Did you put it down halfway through? Like, what happened to you?
Well, I've read the book before. I've actually read it a couple of times. It's one of those like one-off books that I always like every like 3 or 4 years when I'm digging through my bookshelf for something to read, I'm like, oh, this was good. Like there was something about this that I liked, and then I pick it back up and I've completely forgotten all the humor. So I like it. I mean, I really like this book. It's like a unique little I feel like so many books nowadays try to be like the first of a series of something, and there aren't a lot of those like nice one-shot stories anymore. And this is like one of those that I like.
I agree. I thought it was very nice, compressed. I felt like I got the whole story. What about you, Ryan? What did you think?
I also thought it was compressed. I did not enjoy it as much. It typically isn't my type of genre, right? So there's probably some predisposed bias there. Um, I don't know, something about the angle of a romance plot with someone who's dead. It just kind of rubs me in a very strange way. And I think in such a way that it almost predestines me not to like it as much. What I found interesting were the parts where he was experiencing life through other people. I thought that was a pretty interesting edge. But I just felt like the romance plot itself was forced in a way that I was very uncomfortable with. I thought it would have been a really cool book of like, here's this zombie that vicariously lives through all these other people by killing them, and it's like this strange payoff, and he feels guilty for every kill, but it's the only way he can feel human. I really like that angle. I did not like the romance thrown in of the dead and the undead. So
I think a great question to be posed around that is um, can the story hold up if you just remove the romantic element? So keep all of the like story pillars the same, like the ending is effectively the same, but it's really just you remove the romance element and it's really just like a zombie becoming for lack of a better term undead,
right.
not dead
Right.
anymore,
Um, I,
right?
I, I think yes. But I think that's a fun hook, and I think it's a good audience maybe. But that brings to my attention three things that stuck out to me that I thought was fun. I just really loved this insight into like what could a zombie society look like. I have seen so many stories that explore what is it like as the humans in the zombie apocalypse, but I haven't seen a lot explored of like what does the day to day of a zombie look like? What is their society like? Where they have the little school where they train the kids to go for the throat, go for the throat. I thought that was so much fun. Like I thought that was really clever and exploratory, and I like how they go hunting and on these hunting parties, and I thought that was cool. And I also like this dichotomy of there being the zombies who are sort of like halfway between human and dead, and the skeletons who are like the sort of neutral evil characters who like they don't mess around. They're just here to kill. And so I thought that was a nice balance of like these three warring parties going at it at the same time, and the zombies slowly becoming human in like the last chapter of the book was also interesting in that. So I think yes, I think it is a pretty strong plot, and I think some more stories could be told in this universe. Sure. I One of the things I didn't like about this book was I felt like there was a lot of coincidences that just sort of popped up exactly when the author needed it to happen. So two come to mind. The first is that zombies eat brains to understand human experience. They can relive memories by eating the brains. Love that concept. Think it's super cool. The way that the human learns about it, though, is in a throwaway line where she says, "There's this theory that if zombies eat brains, they can relive memories." It's like, what? Where the hell did that theory come from? It totally didn't make any sense coming from her, and it seemed like a real coincidence that that would just come into play, and like it really it really pulled me out of it for a moment. And then the other one is at the ending where we're in like the safe house with the human woman and the good zombie, and then he gets a call from his buddy zombie, but he calls him on the telephone, which doesn't make any sense at all. And he's just like, yeah, I thought maybe the telephones were working, and it's like it was just like a really weird thing that didn't make any sense, like in the middle of the book, like to try and like quicken the pace. So there's definitely a lot of like weird stuff that happens just for the sake of the plot, but those definitely annoyed me, I think. Did anything else annoy you guys about this book?
Ooh. I know that there are definitely things that annoy me, but now I have to think about it.
I think the reason why I left in chapters 4 to 5 is just I felt like some parts were too slow. Like he spends a lot of time like just sitting down and pontificating about the universe, and I found those were just it just was a little bit boring for me. I felt like having a driving plot action was great, and he does go into this like real soliloquy at times where he goes into great detail about the world and the earth and his feelings, and I think that's good in small bits. But I think sometimes it goes too long, especially in those chapters.
While I can definitely understand that, I do also think that is a symptom of you personally. You're the guy who, when you watch a Lord of the Rings movie, you skip all of the plot points and you go straight to the battles.
Oh,
You
Probably.
literally did that once.
we're getting personal. We're doing the meta strat. It is
That
true
did
for all the
happen.
viewers out there. This is canon.
Yeah, or we watched Captain America and you were like, let's skip to the good part. And you skipped the entire beginning, past the transformation, and went straight to the train scene where Bucky dies. I was like, wait.
I think there's media is too long these days. It really is. That's the truth of it. Would you guys agree to that?
I agree. I definitely agree.
I think movies definitely get carried. Not every movie in the world needs to be 2 hours and 15 minutes. A good 90-minute movie still gets the point across.
I 100% agree.
Do you think that this book should have been edited harder? Do you think it should have been shorter?
I think that it's okay the way that it is. It's already short enough. I mean,
It's not very long.
it's small. So I think that the moments where the author kind of lapses into that soliloquist thought are fine. Like the author wanted to do that. Clearly it got past all of the drafts, and I don't think it's too long. You said it yourself. I skipped chapters 4 and 5. Like I don't think 2 chapters of maybe extra setup of the main character's, philosophy on life is too much.
Did you guys
Life.
did you guys see the film adaptation by any chance? I haven't. No.
I
Okay.
did. I did.
Oh, you did. What did you think about it? How'd it compare?
The film, I actually didn't remember much of it. The book kind of re I guess through the book some of the moments were relived. I didn't really love the movie either. Um, and one of my questions I actually had for you all, do you find this book to be romantic in any capacity?
I think there's something classically romantic about two people together in the heart of tragedy and disaster and the world falling apart. They really try to get some real cinema in that last scene with the zombies coming up and the dad shooting his daughter. It was like kind of silly, but like I think there is romance there. Yeah.
I think the element of romance that's hard to swallow for me in this um is the fact that so quickly she takes to him,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
Like when she like is like totally cool with him like putting his hand on her beating heart, like, and like hugging him, and just I to me that doesn't really jive very well. I think that's a little fast, which is why I think I kind of agree. I think Ryan, was it you said where like the romantic element was a little weird for you?
Yeah.
I think it could have been. I think the fact that we go from complete strangers, not just complete strangers, but one of them is a zombie, to they're completely in love with each other in the span of like 6 or 7 days, um, is a bit
Right.
much.
I
And
don't know if
honestly,
they're completely in love with each other. They share a kiss at the end of the book. I think that's their first kiss. You know, that's what it is.
yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
the way I would look at it is this: beyond the necrophilia, in the abstract, this zombie that is supposedly killed, plenty of people. I saw that eye roll, Olivia. Was this not
That was funny
necrophilia?
though.
Is this not
No,
necrophilia?
it's
It,
really funny.
I don't
by
know. I don't know if it
definition.
is because he's, I think a huge part of necrophilia is this idea that the person is like non-conscious and also non-consenting, and I don't think
And
that's the
dead.
case here. And dead.
Oh, is he not considered dead? He's a zombie.
That's something I feel like we should discuss that, but we can put a pin in that. I want you to finish your thought, and then I want to
Like whether
discuss
he
is
is
R
or is
dead.
not dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I'm always confused by like some of the. Yeah,
Well,
I don't know, but I guess going back to the point though, um, supposedly he's killed plenty of people, right? And I don't find it particularly romantic that like what for whatever reason, like be it attraction or whatever else it was, he spares this girl that he hasn't spoken with and has like no idea if he actually like likes in that capacity, but for some reason has like this weird attraction too. I don't know. I always like books, and this is hinting at what you were saying, Olivia. I always like books where it's a little bit like of a slower grind to get to that romance plot, right? Like they get to know the person, they get to know the intricacies, the nuances. It's
Hmm.
not just like like I saw this person and now I'm in love. It's oh, I've shared these moments with this person. I've seen their interests, their fears, everything about them, and now I'm growing to love them. That's what I find to be more romantic and to be a stronger love plot.
I think we can all agree it was a bit fast.
I disagree with that. I don't think it
Oh,
was
really?
rushed. Yeah, I don't think it was rushed. I think especially in times of like war and tragedy, like love moves a little bit. Everything moves a little bit faster. So I was
Also,
actually
maybe the fact that he was munching on Perry's brain at the exact moment he
yeah.
sees her, like there could have been transfer of affections there also.
She's very forgiving.
Yeah, I would love
She
to
is,
see that further. Does he ever confess that it was he who killed her boyfriend?
yeah.
And how did she take that? What's the reaction?
I don't remember where it happens.
Because I know she confronts him about it, and she's like, "Oh, you probably killed that jerk, the other guy," and he's like, "Yeah, sure." But I guess at some point he confesses the truth. I may have missed that part.
He does eventually.
It's okay. We don't need to find the exact
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I don't know. I thought the love elements were fine. I think for me it was more of just the pacing. That's the only issue I had. I love the concept of like, I mean, it's so much fun when one character knows more than the other character about something. And so this case of like he's in or everybody's maybe experienced that in life where it's like, "Oh, you know something that you're not supposed to know and you need to somehow like either figure it out by like, oh, maybe it's this," and then it's like, oh, now you know because you guessed, and like you could pretend you guessed the whole time. And it's this situation of like he knows her favorite food and all these things that she loves, but he can't disclose that or she'll know that he ate her boyfriend. So I think that's like a cool. I would have loved to see that played with a little bit more.
Something, this is kind of returning to that overarching question that I think we're going to come back to a couple of times. Like, is R dead? Or discussing at least the concept of what it means to be dead or alive in this story. Um, is one of the interesting things is like the more we learn about Perry, especially in that the initial blitz of his memories, like the first couple, like the first 15 memories, um, is that Perry, like we see his de-evolution of being very, very bright and happy and whatever, and his devolution into being like basically a walking corpse right before R kills him anyway. I thought it was very interesting that Perry and R are like inverses. Like what we understand of Perry is that he eventually devolves until he's like almost welcoming death when it happens, whereas R is doing everything in his capability to fight death off and fight toward life. I think that's very cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that was highlighted in the last scene where it said like to kill without thought is kind of what the dad was doing, trying to kill the zombie, and that's a parallel to the zombies. So yeah, I think there's some cool plays there. I like that. I did not like the flashbacks too much just because I felt like they kept flashing back to the same thing. Like I know there was at least 3 flashbacks to being in the room killing the zombie, and I kind of felt like I kind of just felt like I was watching it on rewind. Like, oh, I've already seen this scene, and I didn't feel like I was walking away from it with each flashback with a different perspective. So I would have liked to see maybe different stuff. I don't know. I didn't feel like I left every flashback with a real gem.
I also think a lot of the flashbacks are like similar template. You know, they kind of prove similar points over and over. Again, we see like Perry slipping away. We see Julie clinging to life. We see her, you know, that whole thing. I think that's kind of hammered home more than once in those flashbacks.
Does this story remind you, folks, of any other stories? When it was describing combat, I thought about one of my favorite book series called The Witcher, which is by Sapkowski, and it's the namesake of the popular video game. And I thought that guy, man, he does such a good job describing combat. I thought it'd be really cool to see Sapkowski describe a little bit of the fighting that was going on, because I felt like something interesting about this book is that the fast parts move fast and the slow parts move very slow. And I think, there's so much wiggle room there. Like, you really can make the slow part last a whole page or last a whole chapter if you want to. And I don't feel like that, I guess, temporal axis was played with at all in this book. And I think it may have been useful for pacing.
I think it reminded me a lot as well about Twilight in a similar way with the inverse as well, where I think Bella's the female character in that story, right? She seemed like she was void of emotion and growing to become more and more void and was very set on becoming a vampire, whereas Edward was very set on, her underestimating what it means to be human and alive in that capacity. And I thought it was also similar in the sense of, right, like initially when R was saving Julie from that, I think that there was like a small group of zombies that attacked her at one point. Like the whole Fleshies community was like coming out against him on it. And it was kind of similar to Twilight, in my opinion, where it was the forbidden love plot. Um, so that was a similarity I would draw.
I think it's funny when she says to him, like your eyes are so. She goes, "Why are your eyes like that?" And he goes, "Like what?" She goes, "They're like lucid, like they're not clouded over." She goes, "Do they change color or something when you eat?" And he goes, "No, you're thinking of vampires." And I was like, oh, "That's funny."
I remember that line, yeah. I remember that line. That was fun. I haven't read the Twilight series or seen the movies, but I'd love to at some point. That's definitely one of the pop culture references I missed, but I'd love to go back there. And maybe Game of Thrones also. I tried the first book, but I didn't like it too much.
The Twilight books, briefly on a tangent, were worthwhile. I thought. I think one of the things that rubbed me and a lot of other people at the time the wrong way was that a lot of people were comparing Stephanie Meyer to J.K. Rowling, who, well, she has her own many problems, but in terms of her writing, like I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, she's the next J.K. Rowling," and I was like, they're two completely different things. But when I was older and I was able to go back and reread Twilight with like a clearer perspective, I think I was like 22 or 21, um, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually really enjoyable." And as much as I like don't enjoy Bella at certain points, I found her a lot more relatable in the books. In the movies, she is so flat. But in the book, she's actually kind of funny. Her internal monologue, I was relating to that. Like I was seeing a little bit of myself in there, weirdly enough. So I thought that the books were an enjoyable use of time. Movies, not so much.
Right on, yeah. I haven't read a lot of young adult fiction, but I feel like there's certainly a lot of parallels between a lot of the books going on there. And I think what's really cool about Harry Potter is like, I don't know, it felt very different. I don't know, at least for me, as somebody who's not very cultured in that space. So I like that. I like that book. This book didn't really feel different. It felt like a whole bunch of other zombie things I had explored with some new ideas thrown in, which were really cool novel ideas. But I don't know. I also don't read a lot of love stories. Ryan, when you said this wasn't your genre, were you talking about romance or were you talking about maybe like something bordering on young adult fiction, or were you talking about zombies?
I would say the romance piece of it.
Got it. And is
Yeah,
it
I don't read romance either. I actually normally don't like at all. I don't like romance.
what are your okay? Do you guys have any favorite romances then of the ones of any of them? My favorite's probably the time traveler's wife, the time traveler's wife. If you guys have checked that one out, I love that one. Good romance novel.
I'm looking at my bookshelf, trying
Also,
to
maybe
figure it
the Princess Bride is romance with some adventure. That's a fun one.
As far as
That's a great one.
as far as books go, I can't think of any. As far as movies go, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind I really enjoy, and Her are two movies that I very much enjoy. And I thought those were very fresh takes on romance in my opinion.
Do you guys have any genres which you feel like you haven't explored? Maybe that would be a fun thing for us to do in the book club. Is like read a book of a genre we've never tried before.
I feel like there are so many genres I haven't tried.
Geology.
I read a geology book. It was so boring, dude.
All right, save me the time.
But I read the one of the best books on geology, but it's like it was
One
like
of the best is still the worst.
it was well, you know what it was? It was like it's the history of the whole earth, you know? And it's like you're like, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting." And it's like humans are just a little tiny bit of it, you know? I think it's something like if you take your whole arm and you take the length, humans are less than the fingernail in how long the experience is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but I'm like, okay, well, what about dinosaurs and stuff? It's like no, like that's also very short. So almost all the book was about rocks and water getting hot and small wiggly things. I was like, oh, it's so boring, dude. Yeah.
So bringing it back to the book for a little bit. What were your guys' thoughts on, because I feel one of the most pleasant parts of this and surprising is the humor, in my opinion. Um, what were your thoughts on R's like internal monologue humor?
I thought the book was funny. I also really liked his buddy who's a zombie. I thought that guy was so funny. The person who did the voice acting for this book, I think, did a great job of like doing the zombie voices. He kind of took like on a sort of like caveman voice persona, and
Ah.
I thought that communicated really well for the story. So I thought that was fun and enjoyable. And yeah, I think the fun or delight I had in this book was primarily in seeing how zombies have crafted a society so akin to ours, and things like what does their school look like, and this guy he's like practicing learning how to drive for the first time, which is kind of fun. Yeah, so I like that.
Yeah, I think it was funny in the peculiar sense of it being different seeing it from the zombies' perspective. As far as, I guess, direct jokes that had me laughing, I can't think of many. I think there were a couple, but the book didn't strike me either particular way.
Yeah,
Ryan is definitely, it seems, ambivalent toward this title.
this are you ambivalent? This book I didn't laugh, I don't think, and I didn't cry. The last book I read had me shed some tears, which I love. That's a good plus. But this one I didn't cry at all. Okay, well, I guess we should rate it, and then we'll wrap this up, and then we can think about the next book. So,
Yeah.
what are your ratings?
I'm gonna go with, I mean, and this is personally for this little one shot, I think it's like an 8.7. Um, but I think it's an 8.7 for like what it is, if that makes sense. So, you have to kind of know what you're walking into. You're walking into something that's like a fun use of your time, and it's going to be romance, and it's going to be a little weird, but it's like a uplifting little book. If I were to rate it like in overall the scope of literature, I would put it somewhere around like a 6.8 or something like that,
Better
but
than
I think for
average.
what it is, it's an 8.7.
Got it.
Oh wait, do we rate out of 5? I always forget.
It's fine. So you think it's better than average, but somewhat far from excellence.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have to know what you're walking into.
I see. Yeah, I think I would say for me it was pretty average to maybe slightly below average. But then again, I haven't read a lot of books in this genre, so it's hard to say. But I'd give it probably a 2.5, which I think I'll round down to a 2.
And that's out of 5.
Out of 5. It's not going to be a recommendation for me. But I think if you read an abridged version of this book, that might be cool.
Abridged.
Abridged,
It's
yeah.
only this big.
I know. You know what the thing is, though? It's like if I had more time, I would have wrote a shorter note. Yeah, so I think that's what it is. What do you think, Ryan? Final say.
For me, I think it was, and this is with the caveat of this just not being my typical genre, 1.5 out of 5 is what I'd give it. I thought it was really well written, but for me, the parts and the interesting nuances that you could extract out of the book were largely overshadowed by a romance plot I didn't really care for. And I did have fun reading about the zombies, how they lived their life vicariously through others. But I think what fell short was kind of like the overarching drive of the romance, and it actively took away from other parts for me.
All right.
If I had to put it out of 5, I guess I would go with like a 2.7.
2.7.
So we'll put that out of 5.
Got it. Wow.
Wait. How does that? That's
Yeah.
way different.
I know. I rounded down. I thought about a 3.1, but then I was thinking about it like. So we'll go with a 3.1.
Oh, is this in the scope of all literature? Because I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's not an 8.7 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going with scope of all literature.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting that there's so many caveats on the rating. But yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's so fair, right?
Well, I think for me, and to be honest, I think most books in this particular genre wouldn't get like a particularly high rating, and that's just kind of as per my preferences.
I think it's always relative to everything, you know? I don't know. I think it's not fair to... I don't know.
I disagree, because I think there's always preferences, right? And I think you go to particular reviewers knowing in mind that they're going to have a particular tilt, right? Like, let's say some guy hates real-time strategy games, right? And he plays like 40 of them, and he gives like all of them a low score. You're going to be calibrated eventually to know, okay, like a 6 out of 10 for this guy is actually pretty high for a RTS game, whereas a 3 out of 10 is what he gave most of them.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I just saw this review of this game, and it had multiple endings, and the guy didn't realize that. So he only reviewed one of the endings. So it's like, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, let's end the review here, and thank you, everybody.